Yeah.
Wow.
Rich Norris.
Okay. Thanks, Dave. We're here today talking to Rich Norris. He was with the Community Fire Protection District, fought the 1973 NPRC fire. So, Rich, tell us where you were born, where you went to school, when did you decide to become a firefighter?
I was born in Houston, Texas, or a little town outside of Houston. I was adopted. My parents lived in Kansas City, Missouri, and they came down and adopted me and one of my sisters that was with me. Lived in Kansas, raised in Kansas, went to Shawnee Mission East High School. Everybody asked me, what high school did you go to? And I say, Shawnee Mission East. They laugh at me. And then I went into after I graduated, I went into the military. Was there, served overseas in Germany for 3 years. Just missed Vietnam. While I was in basic, the Gulf of Tonkin happened. And the group that I was training with went to Germany. And the next group went to Vietnam. So I missed that. And I got home and didn't know what to do with myself. And somebody said, why don't you try to get a job with the airlines? They seem to be hiring. So I went and took one of these courses, Weber Airline School or something, trained for that, and I got a job with Ozark Airlines, but the only opening they had was here in St. Louis. So I moved up here and lived here ever since. Met my wife here and had my kids.
Okay.
So what else you need?
When did you decide to become a firefighter?
Well, Ozark eventually started, well actually they got bought out by TWA. I lost my job there, and I got a job working, of all things, making donuts at Dunkin' Donuts when they were still in business. And one of the waitresses that was there was it was the one on St. Charles Rock Road, right across from what used to be the old Walmart there, right basically in that area, if you remember that area. Her husband worked for Community Fire Department. She said, they're hiring, why don't you go up there? I said, I had no desire to be a fireman, but it had to be a better job than what I thought was doing, making donuts. So I went up and put in an application, and lo and behold, they hired me. So. Okay.
So, first alarm came in for this fire July the 12th, 1973, about a quarter after 12 at night. So, when did you guys get the call to go?
I wasn't on duty.
Okay.
I was on my day off, and I had a second job. I was worked on a paint crew, and I had got up and I had gone into where I was to go to paint, and I was sitting there waiting for the rest of the guys to come, listening to the radio, and I heard that the record center was on fire. So I went ahead, did my paint crew for 3 or 4 hours, and I figured, well, I'll give the boys a little hand. And lo and behold, 2.5 days later, I was still on the record center fire. I just volunteered and went over. So I wasn't really on duty when it came in.
You were pretty new on the fire department.
I think I'd been there like maybe a couple of years. I was still pretty new, so I was still kind of young and dumb.
So when you got there, what did you go to work doing?
They had me tank up, and they were sending up people in 15-minute crews because it was so hot on the inside, and they would send you up for you had to give your name. There's a crew of like 5 or 6 that would give their name to a guy that would take in the names. He'd send you up and you relieve the crew that was in there. They'd come out and it would go like that. So just went up to the floor, and there was water and heat and the whole bit. So I didn't really, tell you the honest truth, I didn't see that much fire. A lot of the time I was going through file cabinets and watering them down and trying to put out the fire that way. The fire was pretty much centrally located, I think, at that time. I didn't see a whole lot of fire, but I saw a lot of water rather. So.
How many times did you end up going in there then?
Boy, I tell you, I couldn't tell you. Like I said, I was there for about 2.5 days. But actually, what they would do, they would rotate us and send us back to a firehouse to rest up a little bit, and then they'd bring us back. And
was there any time where the conditions got too bad up on that top flat fire floor to where everybody had to come down?
No. I remember the water was starting to get pretty deep up there when we were going around knocking out cinder blocks out of the wall, so the water could kind of, because you could tell from the pictures, the floor was starting to lean a little bit. So we were knocking out cinder blocks, so the water would kind of drain. Because when you had to go up the stairs or the escalator that was there, the water was coming down, looked like a waterfall coming down. You trudged your way up, but I remember it was extremely hot. So we had the old thigh-high boots, and your interior region there get pretty warm.
So how long would you be in there before they'd send the guys up to
about 15 minutes. They'd keep you in there for about 15 minutes, and then they'd bring you back out.
Okay.
So that's about what I did, was go through file cabinets while I was there and watered them down.
Okay.
So
would they? Because when you go through them, they were already burning, right?
Yeah, they were smoldering.
Okay.
On the inside.
Would they then, when you opened them up, would they flare up?
No, they were just smoldering. Like I said, I think they had pretty much knocked down the major part of the fire. If I remember right, they had a huge safe area up there.
Yeah. And
they were having trouble putting that part of the fire out because the way the safe was constructed, you know. But I really didn't see that terrible much fire. Basically, we were just watering down what we thought were hot spots.
So when you went there that first, did you drive over to the record center? Did you report to the firehouse first?
No, I drove over to the record center.
And coming down the street.
Yeah, you could see the brown smoke, and you could see the I guess burning pieces of paper floating in the air, traveling away off. Yeah, you could tell there was something big going on. So I parked my car and walked up and said, "Here I am. What do you need me to do?"
So, lots of smoke, lots of heat.
Lots of smoke, a lot of heat, right? Yeah.
And you'd been through the building before?
Oh yeah, we used to go over there on your regular fire calls all the time. We'd go over there probably about 2, maybe 3 times a week on just fire calls. The fire alarm would go off, or somebody would call something, and they had, some of the people there had kind of a bad habit. They wanted to take a break during the course of a day, and so they'd call in a fire alarm. So it was kind of a regular, it was just kind of one of those, yeah, here we go again over the record center. But this time they said it was the real McCoy.
Yeah. Yeah. Had you had any other small fires over there? No.
No, they'd never, not that I ever remember. Back in those days, we were a 2-shift system, and we had, do you remember the Kelly days? Okay, well, you'd work 2 or 3 rotations, and then you'd get like what they called a Kelly day, which would give you like 4 days off in a row. But I think I was on a Kelly day when this thing came in. Didn't know a thing about it till I heard it on the news in the morning. So, yeah, that was quite an experience. I had to call my wife and tell her that I wasn't coming home for a whole while. I only intended to give them a couple of hours, you know. So next thing I was there for about 2 days.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Do you remember about what time you got there?
Let's see, I went to work I think I went to work about 7 o'clock in the morning, worked for about 3 or 4 hours. I think Probably around 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, somewhere around there. I can't really remember, but I think it was like 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Just, here I am. What do you want me to do?
They sent you on it. Do you still kind of remember?
Yeah, it was kind of scary because it was hot in there. You know, and I had been on some fires when I first started to work there. I don't know if you remember the old Chemox masks. That was what they trained me on when I first started. They wouldn't put me into a fire. They'd wait till the fire was basically about out. Then they'd have me put on one of those Chemox masks and go in there and just get the lay of the land to see what it felt like. But
explain what the Chemox masks were.
It was a canister. It was you had the mask, and they had this canister that when you mixed your breath with it, it would create oxygen. And they had some kind of a brace that you push it up, it would perforate the top of the canister. You'd breathe into it, you'd give it 3 or 4 good breaths, get the oxygen flowing, then you tighten up your mask and you could breathe off of this Chemox mask for about an hour. But the thing was, it only made oxygen at a certain rate. You could actually outbreathe the mask. You could actually, if you had to time yourself, you had to control your breathing or you could outbreathe it. And it would last about an hour and then you come out. So,
is that what you guys were wearing, the Chemox?
That's what I wore. I think they just had some extra Chemox, the canisters, and they were just trying to get them used up because the rest of the crews all had the self-contained breathing apparatus. So, but I just trained on it. I just thought that was interesting. So I didn't know if you guys remembered
I've seen
the Chemox.
That was before my time.
Yeah, I think they were just had some extra canisters they wanted to get rid of, and I learned how to use it. So it was a system. You put the mask on and you take a breath of air and close it up and breathe into it, and then pull it out. Take a breath of air and breathe into it, and you had to get the system going to where it would start creating the oxygen. Once it started, then you tighten the mask up and go on in and do what you did. I just went in and just got the feel of what it was like to be in a fire situation. But when I went to the record center, I walked in and I started walking up the escalator stairs, and the water was just coming down like a waterfall. And the closer you got to the top floor, it started getting hotter, and it was hot. That water was hot. You could only stand there for about 10-15 minutes. You had to come out.
Yeah.
So. Huh?
Biggest fire you ever fought?
That's the biggest fire I was ever on, yeah. Yeah, so it was pretty impressive for a brand new fireman. I was still a little bit leery if I was going to like this job or not, because I was more so worried about not being able to do the job more than I wasn't afraid of the fire or any of that. I was just afraid of not coming up to the standards, because the rest of the guys, they treated me really good. They took me in, you know, and they just wouldn't let me sit still. They'd be teaching me all the time. So that was my biggest deal, is I wanted to come up to their standards. So
did your training pay off, you think, at that fire?
Yeah, we trained all the time. I don't know how they do it nowadays, but you had at least an hour of training every day. And then on the weekends, they would get together at our number 2 house. That's when you do all your ladder work and all the other really physical kind of stuff. But you take an hour every day at the firehouse, and one day he'd ask you streets, or you'd go over knots, or, you know, what you train on. So it was an hour every day.
So going up to that 6th floor, were you guys having to drag hose with you all the way up, or did they have?
I didn't know. They had, when I got there, pretty much the hose was already all in place.
Okay.
I mean, everything was, all the trucks were all situated and hoses were all there. That was pretty much all done by the time I got there. So I really didn't have to do any real hose work other than just move it from spot to spot around the building. one of the firemen, he was walking by one of those cinder block walls on the interior. It fell over on him. We had to drag him. Of course, we laughed at him at the whole time, but it fell over on him. But it was hot, so.
Yeah.
Did he wind up going to the hospital?
No, he wasn't. Excuse me. No, he wasn't hurt. He's just more scared than anything.
Sure.
So.
Yeah. So, one question we're asking everybody. When they built that building, they didn't put sprinklers in because they were worried, a leak or a head get knocked off or whatever, end up with water on those records and all kinds of damage. So what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm quite sure sprinklers would have kept it from being the size the fire it was. But yeah, you're right. There was the only thing they had was like they had hose cabinets, but they didn't have sprinkler systems, and they had fire extinguishers. But yeah, if they'd had sprinklers, it probably would have never gotten to be the size that it got to be. So.
So you spent your first day there, putting out fires up on the top floor, and then
they would take us in groups back to the firehouse, so where we could rest and relax. But the funny thing was, while we were at the firehouse, we were still fighting fires. We got house fires while we were back at the engine house, so we didn't really get a whole lot of rest. So.
Okay. And then you got up the next day and did it all over again.
Yep, did it all over again, just back and forth from the firehouse back to the record center.
And firemen from all across the area were with you?
Yeah, I tell you, I really didn't get in much contact with many of the other firemen. I pretty much stayed with my guys that I knew. I didn't really know a lot of the other firemen in the area, so I stayed with my crews.
Did you see some stuff during that fire that you've never seen happen in a fire before, or haven't seen since? Or?
No, not really. I mean, it's hard to describe somebody that has never been in a fire or seen a fire what you go through. So no, I didn't see anything extraordinary other than it was hot.
Yeah. Did you hire on and do any of the watch work? They were hiring firemen.
No, I had a second job. I was on a paint crew. I told you that. But no, I didn't do that. The other guys gobbled up that job. That was good money.
Yeah.
The fire department wasn't crazy about the guys doing that, but they did it anyway.
Yeah.
It was good money to be made.
Got anything else?
No, I'm just kind of going down our list here. And
Okay.
anything else you can remember from back? I know, it's, like you said, it's been a long time ago. And
Well, I did have one incident that stood out in my mind. At least I thought it was funny. One of our board of directors, he would take the chief's car, and he would take like 3 or 4 guys back to the engine house to rest and relax, and we'd all get in there with our fire gear on. And we were driving back to the engine house, and it was getting hot, and the windows were starting to fog up. And he said, "Somebody crack a window back here." I had my helmet, and I went whap. Because we had been, these cabinets, I don't know what they had in them, but when they were giving off some kind of fumes, and it was kind of making you a little strange. You're tired about that time. But I thought it was funny after I did. He didn't appreciate it. But, I mean, it didn't damage the window, but I'm just sitting there. Somebody cracked the window. Whap. I don't know. I thought it was funny.
that's great.
Sorry.
Oh, no, that's great. Those are the kind of cool little stories we're looking for.
And I do.
Got a couple more, don't you?
I do remember. No, what was it? Hardee's and McDonald's. They were cooking up. They put on extra shifts, come in and start making food for the firemen there. And I do remember they gave us each man a pair of those tube socks, because our feet were all wet and from the sweat and the water getting in your boots and stuff. And I thought, well, that's silly. Well, you put in these tube socks and you put them back in your boots and they're wet again. So, that's just a silly thought. So, yeah, it's funny now, but back then it was very serious business. So, that's all I got. I tell you what, because I've been kind of racking my brain trying to remember the stuff, because that was, 30, 40 years ago.
46.
It was scary for a brand new man, I guarantee you that. I got a lot of experience out of it.
So you were scared.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
I had been through some house fires, but that was pretty big.
Sure.
So when you'd go in up there, by the time you got there, did they have the doors off the hinges to that area, or were you still having to open the doors, go in?
No. There was, when I got there, they were pretty well set up. All the doors were all taken care of, and they had all the hose lines out and everything. They had been fighting a fire for quite a few hours by the time I actually got there. So, I do remember that they were having a water supply problem, and they had to run some lines, and they were running it, and they were cutting holes in the fence that went around the property, and they were going through people's yards, and some of the people weren't happy about that because they were trying to get to the hydrants, because they were trying to get on another street, because the system that they were on, they were sucking it dry. So they were trying to get onto a fresh, there were some different supply lines, because they were starting to have water problems, because they were pumping. You had about four ladder trucks flowing, and various hand lines on the inside. So they had a water problem.
Yeah.
So.
Had you seen 5-inch hose line before?
No, there was no 5-inch hose back then. And it was, all you had was your 4.5 hookup hose, and that was it.
Okay.
So basically, we used a lot of 3-inch hose for supply lines back then. They didn't have 5-inch then. So.
Okay. So how long you been retired?
About 4 years now.
Yeah.
4 years. I was 43 years, I think, with the fire department.
So I know we got you thinking about this as we approach this, but do you ever just sit back and reminisce about this fire?
I think a lot about the guys that I worked with.
Yeah.
A lot of, well, they're all gone now. A lot of them have died off, because I was still a young man, and some of them were middle-aged to getting up in years, and a lot of them have died. I think there's about maybe two of them that are still alive of that old group that I worked with back then.
And the chief, who was the fire chief back then?
Gherkin.
And Gherkin was out of town, correct? Or he wasn't there, if I remember right?
I'm trying to remember. I do remember the assistant chief, Kennedy, I think was his name. I remember seeing him running the show mostly. Gherkin wasn't there, I don't think, on the beginning of the fire, but I believe he did show up eventually.
Right.
Nobody really liked him. He was kind of one of those guys that if you didn't fight, if you tried to cheat and pull a booster on a house fire, after the fire was out and put away, he'd make you lay the whole thing over again and then reload the truck. He had his certain ways he wanted a fire fought, and if we didn't do it right, he'd make us pay for it. So he wasn't too well liked.
I think that's all I got.
Yeah.
That's all you got?
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. All right. Well, I wish I could have come out with more, but
The little stories like you shared, that's the cool stuff we're looking for.
I'll tell you the truth, I haven't really thought about it that much. Until you guys got in contact with me, I hadn't really. Well, there's nobody to talk to about it. So.
Yeah, because I know everybody we've talked to so far, no matter how long, and they all start out the same way. Well, I don't remember a whole lot, but every one of them has told us some little thing that we didn't already know.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, like with you, we knew that there were guys that went into that room right at the beginning, but we didn't know that they kept sending guys in there,
Yeah.
15 minutes at a pop, to work on it from the inside.
When they first started, they weren't doing it that way.
Yeah.
But as the fire went along, they realized that it wasn't good for the men to be in there longer than one. Because, like I said, I think whatever was in those file cabinets was burning. It was giving off something that made you a little strange, you know. I mean, we had CO2 fire extinguishers, and we would grab sodas and hit them with that to cool them off and drink. And I remember one of the guys saw a mouse or something. He tried chasing it down. I shouldn't be saying that kind of stuff. But they had a lunch floor on. Shouldn't be telling you this, but they had a lunch floor on. Like on the third floor. I mean, with all the electricity out, some of the guys were sneaking down there, trying to reach up in those machines, getting sandwiches and.
Sure.
Shouldn't be telling you that.
It's a long time ago.
Yeah, it was. Like I said, it was pretty impressive. But now that I think about it, it was like being in the military. I didn't like it when I was in it, but once I got out, I thought, yeah, I had a pretty good time when I was in the military.
So you said you were wearing the Chemox mask the first day. But obviously, a couple days into it's when you guys were comfortable enough not to wear your mask anymore, and that's when you started.
That's when I started. I started training with the Chemox. Like I said, I think they just did it to get rid of the old Chemox canisters that they had. But I mean, I did train on the SCBA too. So.
But when you came back day 2, day 3, by that time you didn't need your mask up there, and that's when you were starting to.
Yeah. Actually, I think the third day I was there, I don't think we were wearing masks anymore at that time.
Okay.
We were back in the olden days. You only wore the mask if you absolutely had to. We were the old leather lung attitude, you know. One guy, I remember one captain, he'd be sitting in the doorway puffing on a Lucky Strike, telling the guys inside what to do. Smoke pouring out. Now that's some crazy people.
Yeah.
That was back when the captains didn't go in.
Okay.
They would go size up the situation, but they didn't go in the fire with the two firemen. The two firemen went in, and he would be at the doorway, and he would tell them what to do from where he was. So they did things a whole lot different back in the olden days than what they're doing them now.
So in this picture with the Creve Coeur snorkel truck, you can kind of see, you know, the metal and everything, the deformities, and that 6th floor. Do you remember the structure being like unsafe up there?
Oh God, yeah! I remember we'd be up on the roof, and you could see the roof line doing this, where all the metal supports had melted and the roof was caving in.
I see you didn't tell us you made it to the roof.
Well, you didn't ask.
Okay.
I didn't think about it.
Did you make it to the roof?
Oh yeah, I got up there and we were up there. And I'll tell you the honest truth, I think, now that I think about it, we actually did hoist up one piece of hose up there. We had one of those old hose rollers. Remember those? Do you remember those?
Sure.
You hang it on the side, you could hoist up we hoisted up one piece of hose or 2 pieces of hose. I don't remember what it was for. Yeah, I remember that. I got up on the roof, and all the roof had caved in on top of everything, and it was kind of slippery up there. So yeah, I remember that. I remember going around and knocking out cinder block walls so that the water could start to drain, because they were starting to be a major concern, because they had like 4 ladder trucks flowing, plus all the other hoses inside flowing. There's a lot of water.
Okay.
So part of that roof already collapsed completely by the time you went up there? Okay.
You know, they were, if I remember, their biggest problem was that safe area.
Yeah.
All the other major fires had been put out throughout the rest of the building. But that safe area, they were having a heck of a time getting that out.
You can see some of the smoke conditions in this photo here. You just remember brown smoke you said early on?
Yeah, it was brown. Trying to remember this, which way over? Is this north? I think that's north, isn't it?
I'm not sure.
I think they're looking from the back side. I think they're looking from the back side of the building on that picture there. Because I remember when I was coming up the street, the smoke wall was going kind of north. And it's funny, you can see the flaming papers flying through the air.
I think that end of the building,
They had made entry.
east.
No, I think they made entry on the west. I'm not positive, but I think they came in on the west side. That's where whenever we got an alarm there, that's where we went, on the west main entrance. That was where we always went in. I think that's where they made their initial entry. I'm not positive, but I think they did. I wasn't there, so. But just assuming by past practices what we did, that's probably what they did, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, that, I think this is the back side of the building, or this would be the east side of the building here. I can't really tell, but I think it was. It was a long time ago. So, yeah, you could tell that whole top floor was starting to lean, shift over. So they were starting to get concerned about that.
All right.
I hope I helped you out a little
You
bit.
did,
Okay.
very much so, very much so.
Actually, I don't know where it is, but I actually got one of the nozzles off the hose cabinets. It was an old brass straight stream
Okay.
nozzle. I wasn't supposed to take it, but I did. Shh, don't tell them.
We don't tell him.
Yeah, you would. Yeah, I think. And I do remember that everything that was, there was a lot of stuff on that top floor that was still not impacted by the fire. And it was perfectly good stuff, but that was all being thrown away. They wouldn't use it. And that,
Well, you know, the record center now, they moved up to Spanish Lake. And, there's a whole division up there that still works every day on the burn files.
do they still? Oh,
Well, I
wow.
might tell you a little bit about that. But
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
they started that in 2000 because I went to work there in 2002 in the preservation lab. And we only worked on those files on an as-needed basis. You know, a veteran sends in a request. That fire completely destroyed about 18 million records
Yeah.
and damaged about 7.5 million. And so that's the ones that we work on. And, you know, our job was to get them into a condition because, you know, they got smoke, fire, water, mold, debris, all still in them because a lot of them haven't been touched since that fire.
Did those files have like microfilm or something in them, or?
They have microfilm.
Because they were putting off some fumes that made you not be normal.
Yeah, there would be
Nice.
microfilm, there would be
Okay.
photographs, all kinds of different kinds of negatives. So yeah, with that old, even I think with the microfilm, that silver nitrate,
Yeah.
that's the kind of stuff that if you leave it, say in a can, and it starts deteriorating,
Yeah.
it'll combust.
Okay. All
And
right.
so when you add fire to it already, you're just helping it along its merry way.
Yeah, I know it was making the guys act strange. I remember they gave us these orange gloves. Do you remember those? They were like a plastic.
the
or something.
fireball.
Yeah, the fireball, and those were the gloves that they gave you back in those days. We didn't have the heat-resistant things they got now. But I remember pulling those file cabinets out. You would melt. You'd have to keep changing the gloves because they would start to melt. Pulling these file cabinets out because they were still hot.
Yeah.
We'd pull them out and water them down. So I remember that, the old fireball gloves.
So with the Chemox mask that you said you were wearing, okay, you're able to breathe in that.
Yeah,
Did it feel like you were breathing in the heat
no.
from the fire?
No.
Okay.
Actually, it was actually a better, I thought, a better breathing mask than the SCBAs, because the old SCBAs, they weren't like everybody gets the form-fitted masks now, but when you would go into a fire, you would be breathing, and when you'd suck, it would give you the air you needed, and that's all it would give you. But as you breathe in, you could actually feel some air coming in from the inside. But the Chemox mask didn't do that, and you could actually out-breathe it. You could breathe faster than it would create oxygen, so you had to control your breathing so that you didn't pass out. But I just don't ever remember wearing, other than the Chemox mask, I don't remember wearing any masks on the Record Center fire. I mean, they did when they, for all those pictures that you saw of the stuff there, that was what they used, I think, on their original attacks and stuff.
And later on,
but when I got,
a lot of the bottles.
When I got there, they weren't using masks.
That's probably some of the other departments had already switched over to the SCBAs.
Right. Yeah, because I remember because everybody had different systems, and some of the people's masks wouldn't fit our recharging system. So,
okay.
Yeah, it got a little. That's when you found out that all fire departments operated differently, because their masks wouldn't fit our recharging systems, and our masks wouldn't fit their recharging systems. So, yeah, but I don't remember using the mask on the Record Center. I think most of that part of it was already done on the first crew that got in there. They took a beating on that fire. Well, we took a beating too, but it wasn't near what they went through.
Sure. Yeah. Very good.
Yeah.
All right.
It was interesting. It was an experience.
Something you'll never forget.
Yeah, you don't ever forget. It's now that you got me going, little things are starting to pop into my mind. Some of them kind of silly, and for 2 days I got $128. That's all I got for 2 days. I learned not to volunteer. Of course, I should have learned that when I was in the Army, but I was just gonna go over there and give them a couple hours of my time, and I'll be back home, honey. 2.5 days later, well, here I am. So yeah, that was fun. Now that I look at it, that's all I got.
Very good.
All right.
Well, thank you so
Thanks
much.
a lot.
Hey, you're welcome.
That's some good stuff.
Well, I hope.
Well, like Mike said, everybody's got their own little stories, and if we put 20 of these stories together, it's going to be a really, really cool project. So now I'll tell you what, you ever come across that nozzle,
okay,
hose cabinet, you let me know.
Oh yeah, I still got your numbers. So.
Okay.
Now
I got a little collection.
Okay.